So
Mr. Mayor.
if people say, okay, I want to be annexed, so the way it looks like to me, for future reference.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that you are doing exactly that, surrounding the district, and then that makes all of a sudden we become a pocket. And then that's the pocket, when you're all around us touching the city, that you're saying.
So are you talking about the Southside Water and Sewer District?
The south side.
South of
district.
Fox Farm.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about that, okay? We don't have to do that. We could annex the Southside Water and Sewer District today. Because in 1970, 75% of the people that owned the property there wrote and gave us permission to annex them at our leisure in order to get the water. Okay? So those agreements are actually filed at the county, and those agreements look like this.
Does that follow the property owner?
It does.
It says that in the statute.
It does, and it's on your title policy when you get your house. So if you bought a piece of property after 1970, there's an agreement on that property that says that you'll be annexed. So we had a lady, Mrs. Lone, who spoke at the what was it called? The House Bill 73. So here it says a consent to agree that we do hereby consent to annexation of the above property presently within the Southside Water and Sewer District to the City of Cheyenne after entire bonded indebtedness have been paid, which has been done. And we covenant, and where is it? This agreement shall constitute a covenant to the above described property and bind undersigned their heirs, legal representatives, and assigns for full performance hereon. I have this for 75% of the properties in Southside Water and Sewer District. So if we wanted to, we could have done this in 1971, 1981, 1991, 2001 when I became elected at City Council, and we could do it today, but we've never done it. And I can.
It's on the deed?
It's on the deed.
It's not on our
No, it's not on my deed.
Well, there's 25% that don't have it. I agree. There might be some, but in order to get the water back in the day, the city of Cheyenne was like, this would create a wall that we can't grow beyond. And so they wanted to make sure there was not a wall. And so they said, look, we'll give you guys the water. You guys have an emergency, we'll do that. But we can't create an artificial barrier for our future growth. And so that was the deal that we made with the Southside Water and Sewer District. And all those, in order to get the water, they had to get 75% of the people to agree to do that, and they did it. And so these are all filed at the county. We have them for Southside Water and Sewer District, and I believe we have it also for Orchard Valley. We have agreements for all of the Orchard Valley too, if I remember correctly. And so I don't have to do anything strategic. I don't have to do any special annexations. If we truly wanted to do this, we could do it anytime we wanted to. But the problem is it doesn't make any sense. I got to hire 20 police officers. I got to hire snowplow drivers. I got to hire sanitation drivers. And we're talking tens of millions of dollars worth of expenses for us to do that. I can't make it work. It doesn't make sense. It financially does not make sense to do it at this time. And so the city council has never done it. But just so you know, we don't have to contrive something in order to do that. We have the right to do it today.
Just because somebody petitions doesn't mean the city has to even accept those if it's not for the good of the people of the entire Cheyenne. Not just city people, but county people. Just because somebody petitioned doesn't mean the city or the mayor has to agree with it, that it is for the best of the whole community.
And we haven't done it, ma'am.
I disagree that 1,200 and some acres, I don't believe is the best for the community. It's going to be pushing all these mobile home stations out, and even at the city council meeting, in your own words, was that it's not a problem.
So let's talk about that. Okay, so we did annexation of 1,280 acres. The Schroths and the Sarahs live on that property. Nobody else. Yep. So there's nobody else living there. So there's nobody to get pushed out. I don't understand how you can say that people are getting pushed out of their homes by doing this annexation.
Why did the people who are living in those mobile homes, why are they all fighting all of that? Because that land is going to be pushed out.
Pushed out to what? I don't understand.
There's going to be purchased stuff, and the individuals who had to live there, and because 90% of Cheyenne's crime came out of there, it wasn't your problem. You don't want those mobile home parks there.
So I still don't understand what you're asking, ma'am. So,
I
please, sir, thank you.
Clarification is just like these people are talking, you're making these pockets, which is exactly what this 1,280 acres is doing. We are on College Drive. We're gonna become a pocket off of College Drive. Our business is. Same thing with these mobile home parks. They're gonna be created pockets. And annexing that.
I have no problem with my taxes increasing, theoretically, but there's a lot of people in those parks that don't have that kind of money. And they were there first.
But they're renters, they're not paying taxes, are they, ma'am?
Yes.
What I mean is the property taxes.
If we own our mobile home, we are paying our mobile home taxes.
That's fair, the property
And
taxes
those
on
are
that.
going to increase
Yes,
when you
ma'am.
annex and allow development and everything else. Those are going to increase. Some of the people that we're saying are on limited budgets, limited incomes. And it's going to force those people lose their homes and have to move into assisted living, or they're going to be forced to do that because they're not going to be able to afford to live in their own home that they've owned for many years. We've owned ours for 14 years.
And honestly, that, guys, I think what she's saying is a legitimate point, right? That I think in last year in Laramie County, the assessed valuation of our homes went up 12%. And that's not areas being annexed, that's just across the board. And I think if you look this year, we'll probably see similar things. I think that's why you're seeing so many bills in front of the legislature right now for tax relief from property taxes. But I don't think that has anything specifically to do with actions the city are taking, just that there's not enough housing in our marketplaces and the value of those homes are going up. I mean, my house went up significantly also. And I think if we didn't do anything, your house went up 12% last year on the average in Laramie County. That's what the assessor tells us. When I did my budget last year, I asked him, how much is the valuation across the county going up? And his answer was 12% on average.
So you have to sell that home to realize that capital gain.
Correct.
So that's funny, but I got a question for you.
Yeah.
A lot of jurisdictions have decided not to follow laws. I know Boulder, when pot was still illegal, they allowed legalized pot. You're saying you shall. Why can't you just say, well, we're not going to follow that law? That's what the majority of these people want.
So I think that's why don't I just ignore the law? Well, because I stood up and I put my right hand up and I vowed that I would follow the laws of the state of Wyoming, the ordinances of Cheyenne, and I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. I'm not going to look at a law and not follow it. I can't do it.
Anytime it says shall in the statute, it's
may for the government. Okay, do you understand?
I don't agree.
Well, I'll find it and I'll get it to you.
I appreciate that. My lawyers for over 20 years have told me that if the legislature wanted us to have an option, they would put may. If they don't want us to have an option, they put shall. And the fact is, I was just at the legislature and they were arguing this. That they said, we don't like shalls, we'd much rather have mays because that gives flexibility. Because shalls are absolute to us. And I don't believe I have the ability to not follow the law.
Well, aren't you already violating the law then for all the properties that are totally surrounded and you're not annexing them?
It doesn't say we have to.
Well, you're saying it shall means you have to. No, you have no choice, you said.
You have
Shall
no choice.
says you will.
Your words.
No, what I said.
Your words.
Let me
Shall.
Wait, let him hear it. Let him talk.
Okay, so when we get a request for an annexation, okay, when somebody brings us a petition to annex, when somebody brings us a petition to be annexed, the law says we have to do a couple things, okay? We have to look at the signatures and make sure those signatures are valid, okay? And then we have to go through 6 statutory criteria. Let me read them to you.
No, I'm saying
That's not.
if you don't have to be annexed.
And then,
on our deed. We shall be annexed.
no, it says when the city asks. I'll read it to you. It doesn't say that. Do you want me to annex you? That's not what you want. So let's go.
Whoa.
Yes, ma'am. So let's read this. It says that we have to look at 6 things. It has to be for the protection of the health, safety, and the welfare of the persons residing in the area. Okay? So being on city water and sewer rather than being on a septic, we think that is a health and safety thing. It prevents pollution from going into the aquifer. The area has to be a natural, geographical, economical, and social part of the annexing city. Most of us think we live in the city of Cheyenne. When people ask me, where do you live? I live in Cheyenne. It's a logical, you're part of our city. The area sought to be annexed is logical and feasible that we can provide the services, water, sewer, those types of things. The area is contiguous. Does it touch? Does the city own or operate the utility? No, we do not. So can we provide electrical through our franchise? Yes. And did we send a letter to the people 20 days previous to the public hearing by certified mail that we're going to have a public hearing? And if we find that those things are all met, then it says in the law that we shall annex that property by ordinance. So that's if somebody voluntarily comes to us and asks to be annexed. And
If you don't come and ask, though, that's what I'm saying.
yeah, so there's nothing in here that says we have to go out and annex properties unless there's a reason for us to do that. And for us, to this point, we haven't gone out and forced annex properties into the city until just very recently.
So if that says you are able to provide fire, police, sewer, all that,
Yep.
you should pay for it without taxing those people that are affected.
You know, I think he just brought up a really good point. You know, this was a January of 2022 goal of the city council to annex all these county pockets. And if we did that a year ago, you would have had to pave your road, put curb, gutter, and sidewalk in. You would have had to hook up to city water and sewer. You would have had to brought your property all the way up to city standards right away. And it would have been an unfunded mandate upon you. We spent the last year looking at all those unfunded mandates to see what would that cost and what can we do to make them go away. And today, when we annex a piece of property, there's $0 required. We don't require you to fix your road. We don't require you to put curb, gutter, and sidewalk in. If your well and septic are healthy and work, you can still use them. And if your septic system or your well fails, we do not consider that to be a development action anymore. A development action means, used to say, if you hooked up to city water because your well failed, or septic system because your septic failed, then you'd have to bring your property all the way up to standards. You'd have to do curb, gutter, sidewalk, all of that stuff. You're on 5 acres, that could be $100,000. We said that if your septic fails or your water fails, you can hook up to city water. We don't consider it a development action. We said that's a humanitarian thing. You can hook up, and you don't have to do any other improvements. All you have to do is pay to hook onto the city water and the city sewer at the same rate that we pay as city residents, because you'd be a city resident. And so we wanted to make sure, that's why it took us a year, because we wanted to make sure when we do this, that it doesn't cost anybody anything. You don't have to do anything to change. And if we annex you, if you annex into the city voluntarily, you have to bring all your property up. And if you have a horse, you can't have a horse anymore. If you have a mule, you can't have a mule. You can have 7 chickens. If you had 14 chickens, you got to get rid of 7 of them. But if we annex you, then all of your non-conforming uses are grandfathered for eternity. So if you had a horse, as long as you have a horse forever, you can have it. If you have a cow, you can have your cow. If you have a business that's non-conforming, you can have your business. And we actually give you a form to fill out that says, here's the things that we do, so that we memorialize those, so that when I'm gone and when the people who remember are gone, and the next person who buys your property, they still have that same right. And so we spent a year working to try to make sure that when the annexations happen, that there's 0 cost. And when you look at our annexation reports now, on the bottom of those annexation reports is, what will this cost you? And it says $0.00.
Can't that be changed?
Yeah, we did
In
just,
the future, you can change and say, well, now we're going to charge.
we did just change it. We changed it from you having to pay for everything to 0. And so, yes, sir, it could change. An ordinance could be changed.
From 0 to cost.
It could, yes, sir.
We're not going to go.
But if you're already in the city, you're grandfathered. We can't retroactively make you do something.
If you have a cow, let's say you have a cow, like you said.
Nope, it's in state law. It's a state law. When we annex you, you are guaranteed by state law, under 15.1, I believe it's 410 if you look, that says that your non-conforming uses are grandfathered and guaranteed for as long as you own the property and anybody else who buys that property after you, as long as you don't have 1 year of non-use. So if your cow dies, you got to borrow a cow every year, put it on the property, so so your grandfather doesn't. Because if you go for 1 year without it, then you no longer can have that grandfathered safety. So we're trying to make this as humane as we can. So the only thing that really changes, you guys, is the color of the map goes from being a county pocket to a city pocket, and the bad part is that we're going to charge you 5 mils more in property taxes. So on a $250,000 home, it's $10 a month. So just in full disclosure, it is a little bit more expensive to live in the city.
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yeah.
Is it that specific that if it's a horse, it has to be a horse, and if it's a cow, it has to be a cow, or is it livestock?
You know, sir, I don't know exactly if there's a specific law to that. I've always looked at it, if you have a horse, you get to have a horse. And you want to change that to a cow, I don't know that you get a chance to do that. I don't know the answer to that, honestly. But it says your non-conforming uses are grandfathered forever.
Could be livestock.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't know how that looks, sir. If a non-conforming use is livestock or if it's specifically a cow, I don't know the answer to that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I've got a couple of things that I'm upset about. I listened to most of the city council meetings and the Laramie County Commissioner meetings and everything. One thing that really irked me was about the police and the fire departments. The councils were making it sound so much like, okay, you're in this little section, they can't respond for this and that. So I put it out there on Facebook, like, that's not my understanding. When Kozak was the chief, it was quite clear that there was, communication between the two and cooperation. So first of all, and that's not the first time, the council members have made misstatements, or they've made statements about things that they haven't verified in the past. I would like to make it a requirement that when council city members or county, if they're going to be making statements like that, I want them to have researched it first, asked the authorities themselves, and know damn well what they're saying, because they're relaying information to the public, and if the public does not have the time to go to all of these things to find out what's out there, okay, so that's one thing. Educate your own people, educate yourself. Secondly, I would like transparency. You can tell me all day long that 90% of the people have been asked to be annexed. I'd like to see that list. Everybody's been great on their politician stands about transparency, but then once they get into office, gee, it's amazing how hard it is to get information. So I would like to see, if your office is doing correctly, or if the city or the county is doing things correctly, there should be a detailed list on who received what, on what day, when they responded. I mean, come on, I used to be a secretary for years, and with modern technology, it takes a clerk 5 minutes to do that shit, okay? So, transparency. I don't want to hear it from you. I want to see the actual numbers. I want to see who's really asking for it. Then, as far as like all these pockets, okay? It's my understanding that the city has already annexed a little bit further and a little bit further over the years into the county, getting closer and closer to Fox Farm Road. And now people along Fox Farm Road are like, oh, so when is it going to be on the south side of Fox Farm? Like when all those apartments started going in. Okay, then another thing, people are talking about, oh, but there is the water and sewer and everything. We've got water and sewer. And there is no reason why anybody who, if it's a water and sewer issue, they can have it. They don't have to be on well and septic. They can pay to have their water and sewer in, no problem. So that's another fallacy that I keep hearing in these meetings too, about the precious water.
So you asked a lot of questions. Let's go back to the very first one, okay?
Yeah.
You asked about the 90%, right?
Yes.
So what I can do is, I've been married for 2 years.
Yeah.
I can give you every annexation for the last 2 years, how they started. Would that help?
Okay.
So before,
Excellent.
so,
It
so
should be on a website.
and so,
That is public record.
and so it is public record.
We're sitting here.
All you gotta do is ask.
Flying out everything about everybody who's been arrested, everybody who's been this,
Ma'am,
everybody
all you have to do is
but
ask.
we can't see.
Ma'am.
Why should we even have to ask? This was part of everybody's platform to
No.
begin with all this transparency.
Why should you ask?
and everything.
Ma'am, I can't read your mind. I don't know that you want this information. How do I know that you want it? If you want to know where all those annexations happen, just ask me. I'd be happy to provide the information. After the meeting, you give me your name and your address.
It should be.
And the other thing I would say is,
I don't want it just for myself. I want it for all of us.
so you guys have a Facebook website or a Facebook page on annexation?
Not everybody has Facebook.
Well, but let me ask you, but I tried to get on it so that I could read it, and you guys wouldn't let me on. So let's be transparent. Open it up to the public so we can all look at it. I requested to be on.
Why does it have to be on Facebook? Why can't it be on a regular website?
No, I'm happy to do that, but you guys are the folks who are really interested in annexation, right? You're all part of this user group.
We're against it. We're against it.
Well,
I understand that
and
you're
that's
against
another thing,
it,
too.
but I would like to be able to provide that
Now
information
these
for you.
pockets being totally surrounded.
Yep.
Up until just a few months ago, my understanding was that the city can automatically go in and annex anything that is surrounded by 75%.
We can.
of it. Okay, but now you're sitting here talking about properties totally surrounded. So now I'm gonna go home thinking, oh, great, because the city's not all totally surrounded by me. Oh, but that's a fallacy, because what's really true is that if you got 75%, 3/4 of the way around my property can be annexed whether I like it or not.
So if you guys read 15.1406, it is the state law. It says that the ability to stop an annexation by 50% of the landowners or people owning 50% of the land is not valid if you're 75% or more surrounded. But what I said to you guys was it was the city council's goal to take all the ones that are 100% surrounded, and that's what we're doing. So there are other places that are 75% surrounded. We're not looking at
Why
those
don't we
properties.
have that on the legislature, with the city guaranteeing that they're only going after ones that are 100% surrounded, and you're gonna leave the rest of us alone?
I didn't say that, ma'am.
I know, why not?
I didn't say
I mean,
that.
why can't they?
I said the city council made a goal a year ago to annex all the properties 70 or 100% surrounded by the city. They could have done 75%, that they could have. They chose not to. They chose to make it 100%. I can't speak what the city council will do in the future, but that's our goal right now, is to take those 65 properties, 100% surrounded, and bring those into the city limits.
Okay,
And you're
so
right.
then
She's right. If it's 75% or more surrounded, it can be brought into the city limits.
So can the citizens then of the county and the city jointly, if they want, make it mandatory now for the city to change it to where they will only attack those places or confiscate those places that are 100% surrounded, and, you know, that we set our own rules for the other part, because right now, like you're saying, if it's 75% surrounded, we're vulnerable.
And that's above our pay grade. That's at the state level. That rule comes from the state. And so it's a state law, and city councils have the authority to do that. And you're right, it's 75%, but that is not our goal. Now,
That's for the state.
That's when we talked to.
you asked a question, ma'am.
So I know we've gone out to the county a couple of times to see where we are in South Fork as far as annexation goes. And I understand that we are owned by a corporation out of Washington State, which we would have no control.
Suspiciously close to Microsoft.
My question would be, I'm not a computer programmer, but I do know enough that why can't we go in and do a record search on our address? I think this is pretty much what we're trying to get out on a website. How come the city can't do the same thing the county did? We went in and put our address in and they pulled up everything. Now, why can't you make that open to the public on the city's website? Type in our address and see where it is. Because that map you brought was crap.
Well, if it was bigger, that'd be easier to see, but it gives you a sense of what the areas we're looking at.
But
does it
what
not?
I'm saying is why just a few, probably few clicks, probably a few types of a program situation. Yeah, like finding our voting district. Why can't we, the people that are in the county, type in our address in the city website and find that information out for ourselves?
Technically,
I
you
mean,
can.
we pay taxes. We may live in the county, but when we come into the city to do shopping, we pay taxes. So we still have a right to know what's going on in the city.
It's public information, you guys. If you look at your map
Yeah.
and you're surrounded by the city, you're probably going to be annexed. And if you're not surrounded by the city, we have no interest in doing that.
But we should be able to go to the website.
You can
and
do
look
that through the
at
Laramie County Assessor's website page.
Yep.
I use their
the county
map.
assessor.
The county assessor. They have a mapping function on there. I use it all the time. It gives
Are
you
you
all.
in this group on Facebook at all? Or do you have a?
Sir.
So I'm going to go back to my question that I asked at the city council meeting, and I didn't talk to you. I talked to the zoning guy that you had. The way that those criteria read out, legality and everything like that, was it had to be good for the city and it had to be good for the landowner in order to accomplish this, correct?
So the landowner being annexed and the city, yes.
Right. And so that's what I wanted specified to be, and I'm about these 1,280 acres that are over here. is I still don't understand how 1,280 acres with 3 landowners on it is beneficial to a city that is already cut down. I mean, just like you just stated, you would have to hire police officers, you would have to have fire stations and everything like that.
Let me answer your question. So what he's asking is how is annexing 1,280 acres that have 3 people living on them, 2 Sarah properties in the Schroffs, did I say that right? There are 3 houses. How is that beneficial to the city? And so that area is zoned light industrial, okay? And so as a city, and as a county, true, we need to create jobs. We need to create a tax base. So we've all seen the ups and downs. When the state does well, we all do well, right? And when the state hurts, then our revenues go down and the county and the city hurt. And so we're trying to create an environment or an economy here that is maybe not as susceptible to the ups and downs of the state. So by creating a light industrial business park, it allows us to recruit businesses to come into that, to create a tax base that will help support the county and the city, to bring jobs that will help create the spending so that we have the sales tax revenues, and to create an environment where maybe our kids could choose to stay here. So I find that to be very compelling.
But the way that reads is it should be beneficial at the time of annexation, not farther on down the line. That's what I was trying to give my answer.
Correct.
It is not beneficial at this time for us to do that. With that business park there, with those 3 landowners getting together, building that business park, it would then be beneficial to the city. I would 100% agree, but annexing right now, I can see a lot of city expense where, and they couldn't explain to me at the.
We have 0 city expense. Right now, we have 0, that land is annexed. Yes, we have to cover it by our fire department. Yes, we have to cover it by our police department.
So that's
but that's the only expenses that we have that I'm aware of. And to me, that's a very nominal cost for the benefits that we get, which is the ability, and they shared with us their plan, and that's public, that this was going to be a business park, that there is a 700,000 square foot data center going there, plus there's going to be auxiliary other businesses that will eventually be sited in that area. And that is definitely a benefit to, I believe, both the county, city, and state in general.
Down the line, correct. But today, this is not a benefit to us. If they have that goes out there and before this all gets built and that thing goes under fire, obviously county is going to be able to respond, because they're going to have the closest fire station there is there and take care of that. Put that annexed into the city and it's sitting there dormant, now you're taking money from the city, correct, to go put that fire out, correct?
Yes.
And it's costing the city more money than that land is giving them at that point, correct?
I don't know. I think the assessed valuation probably covers more than our costs. I think the taxes that we get from that land probably covers way more than our costs to provide the services today. And down the road, I mean, they're going to build a multi-billion-dollar facility.
Without anything on that land, what are your taxes you're going to get from that?
I don't have that
Development
number.
went bankrupt tomorrow. You're sitting on 1,200 acres, city annexed land.
Yes.
It's not going to bring you revenue. It's going to cost you money. You just talked about all South Cheyenne. You don't want to annex everything to the Cheyenne water management just because it's going to cost you too much. But you'll take that because it's going to give you a lot of revenue in the future.
Correct.
Is this the best path you're taking for the future of this area? You and I are gone. Are you really looking out for the welfare and the development of this city and county? Look to the south how it's developed rapidly. Look at Greeley, look at Fort Collins, compare the two. I don't know how much you've looked at them over the last 30 years. I kind of have. Fort Collins did some smart things. Greeley kind of just did what we're doing here. Grab here, grab there, and you got pockets of really impoverished areas that the county is struggling to service because they don't have the money, because the city has taken all the cream of the crop and left the lower tax revenues for the county to take care of.
No,
You're creating
I
pockets.
suppose you could look at it from that perspective, but again.
Well, yeah.
Again, remember, our annexation laws don't allow us to go in and do like they do in other places. We can just take a nice square chunks, annex it, assimilate it into the city, take the next chunk and do that. I think that would be the most, from a planning perspective, would probably be the best way to do that from a planning perspective. We also have a human thing. And so from us, we're going to take lands that are open. So I would show you the business park along I-80, the North Range Business Park. We have Microsoft there, we have NCAR there, we have Walmart distribution there, we have UMC coming. We have 2,500 primary jobs.
Sure. know what?
multi-billions of
You know
dollars.
what?
And what are
55 acres,
and-
Cheyenne Power Park, we are light industrial. We don't want to come into the city. They didn't have to come into the
But
city.
you
like
give
said
me
it
a
helps.
chance to, I listen to you, let me answer the
Okay.
question, okay? So if we're to look now and say, are those benefits to this community? There's 2,500 primary jobs there. There's multi-billions of dollars worth of investment that pays the taxes. The number 3 taxpayer in Laramie County is there, which is Microsoft. And the revenues that come from that provide the sheriff money, provide all the county government money, provide the city with revenues, provide jobs for our families. Did that make our community better? I absolutely would say yes. And if you don't agree with that, we'll have to agree to disagree. I believe that that is sound planning, that we have an area of land, we're planning the roads that are going to serve it so that it can get in and out properly, we're planning the utilities that are going to be there, we're doing all the things that you're supposed to make sure that that'll be an asset to the area. So there'll be parking, there'll be transportation, all the things that you want. We're doing all of those things today, so that when it develops, it will be an asset to the community. And we're going to provide the quality jobs and the quality opportunities this community is begging for. So do I believe, in fact, sir, that is a benefit to the city? Absolutely. Do I think it's a benefit for the people who are going to work there? I absolutely do.
But it's not today.
Okay.
But I don't agree with you that that's what the law says.
When it gets annexed in.
We just have to disagree on that, so I don't believe that that's.
But you see, you can't
You're saying I can't look a week down the road or a month down the road. I just don't think that's.
I'm saying that it should be developed and it should be beneficial to the city too, for the city to annex it the day that it's annexed, not 10 years down the road, 3 years down the road next summer.
We just disagree on that.
And the development you just said is, I agree wholeheartedly. It's a smart thing for the development community and our tax base completely. But what about the folks who live in these trailer courts that you're kind of leaving behind?
So what do you want me to do?
So how are they?
No, because I think that's a really good question.
Well, wait a minute. No, let me finish for a second. You're developing beautiful places, Microsoft centers and all that's going to have great tax revenue.
Yep.
But these folks are going to get left behind. People who own that land under their homes are going to have an opportunity eventually to say, hey, let's develop all this and kick them out. Happens in Laramie.
Because they don't
Okay,
own
so
their
then
land.
Laramie got forced to have to bring in a bunch of funding from the federal government to develop, I can't remember what it's called, this subsidized housing for all these people that were elderly, had nowhere else to go into. But Laramie's a small enough community, the people stood behind it and got it done. That's going to be really hard to get done in this community, take care of our residents. So what are you doing? Okay, here, I'm getting the gold nugget over here. What am I going to do to help these folks come up to this so they're not impacted negatively?
So I think from my perspective, you're saying because we did this, that's going to happen. It could happen today, even if no development happens. I don't know how to answer your question. It's a hypothetical. I don't know if it's going to happen or will
You're
happen.
elected. Go figure it out.
But if it does happen, we'll stand ready to do everything we can to help. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to tell you. I understand that. I really do, and I think we have an obligation to try to help folks that live in those areas be successful.
So you're going to support House Bill 73, right?
I am not.
You're not?
No, I'm supporting House Bill 142,
Okay.
which is basically the same thing. It requires notification. So of those two bills, that's the one I'm supporting.
And Mr. Mayor, within the remaining of your tenure, what is allotted and what is planned for, you say it's a nominal thing for the first responders, for the sheriffs, and for the city
I never
police
said they were
department?
nominal. Oh, you mean our expenses? Yes,
Your
ma'am.
expenses
Yep,
are.
yep.
Moving forward, how is it, and what do you, or the city, the county, and even the fire districts, whether it's city and or county districts, what do you guys have allotted with all of these taxes and revenues coming in to man all of the safety that is needed in the city? Right now, it's all failing. From the city police, from the fire districts, and everything, because they don't have enough staff. They don't have enough funding for the staff. You have empty fire stations that cannot even be manned because there's no people to fill these positions. What is your plan to make the whole community safe? Because you're adding all of these jobs, people, community to come in, more land, more buildings, more fires, more crime, more everything. What are you going to do in the future to fund the safety of all of these people?
For the sake of time, you've made your point, okay? And you asked a really good question, so let me tell you what I did.